Okay.
Good.
All right.
As you can see, Lynn, we're all learning.
Yeah,
Wonderful. We'll do it together. So, okay. So as you all know, my name's Lynn Nichols. I am the Director of Victim Services. And what that basically means is I oversee all the direct service staff that pretty much works with the public. So we have many different satellite offices, and then we have work that we do at the main headquarters. And I'll go through all of that throughout the presentation. And what we're looking at right now, that's the Women's Center building. It's located at 2 West Street in Danbury, Connecticut. And that's what we call our main headquarters. So I just thought it would be good to give some visuals. And throughout this presentation, you're going to see that I like using a lot of pictures because I just think it's very helpful. And if anyone has any questions, I can't see everyone, so just speak to me and we'll and I'll answer them the best that I can, or we could just save the questions for the end. So the Women's Center is a nonprofit social service agency serving Upper Fairfield and Lower Litchfield counties. And what that means is basically we're a crisis agency that focuses specifically on domestic violence and sexual assault. And that's kind of our specialty. And we go beyond that with divorce, custody, any major life crisis that someone could be going through that may escalate a situation. We're there to help. So it's not just crisis. There's a lot more to what we do. But basically in our catchment area, we serve 13 towns. So that's Bethel, Bridgewater, Brookfield, Danbury, Kent, New Fairfield, New Milford, Newtown, Reading, Ridgefield, Roxbury, Sherman, and Washington. And I put a map of the state of Connecticut here, and you can see all the different colors. So there's an agency like ours in every single catchment area. So we serve Ridgefield and then all these other towns. So you can see on the map all the different shaded areas. So we have partner agencies throughout the state that we work closely with. Like if we're relocating someone or sheltering them, we'll contact them and we'll work together in order to keep someone safe. At the Women's Center, there's another picture of the Women's Center, and that's West Street. So at the Women's Center, like I said, we're a dual crisis agency. A lot of the agencies throughout the state are not dual agencies. They either specifically do domestic violence work or sexual violence work. So we're one of 4 in the state that serve both populations, and they're really co-occurring issues. So I think it's valuable that we're able to serve both, and I'm very grateful for that. We have many different services. So one of the main services that we provide is on-site counseling. And that could be crisis counseling, meaning someone just walks in, they don't need an appointment. If something happened, if they need to file a restraining order, they can just walk through our headquarters and we'll do an intake, assess the situation, see what's safe for them to do, and then assist them. Or they can do ongoing counseling, and I'll discuss a little bit more of what modalities we offer through the agency. We have support groups and workshops, which I think we're getting to be known for. We offer so many support groups and workshops, and especially during COVID, it's been extremely valuable when people have felt so isolated. It's given them that form of connection that they haven't had in a long time. We are a 24-hour, 7 days a week crisis response agency. So we have active hotlines and we have staff that rotate and take the hotline over. And if the police call or the hospital calls and we need to respond or shelter someone, we do operate 24/7. And the staff's wonderful. They all take shifts so that no one's burnt out and suffering from too much vicarious trauma. We have bilingual advocates, and we use something called language lines. So there's really no language that we can't communicate with. We have our advocacy, so that goes in all different forms: legal advocacy, victim compensation. We have our emergency residential facilities, which many people know as safe homes or shelters. And we have one for our agency, but like I said, with all the other partner agencies, they also have one. So sometimes if we have a Danbury resident that's not safe in Danbury because their abuser lives there, we'll call a partner agency and we'll relocate that individual somewhere that's safer. We make referrals to other agencies like Office of Victim Services, so that victims, let's say they have, they were injured because they were assaulted and they need restitution or plastic surgery. There are state funds that will work with us as a crisis agency to pay for those surgeries. We also have a working relationship with Connecticut Legal Services, and we provide attorneys with for individuals who are looking to get divorced safely and don't have the means to afford an attorney. We have our court advocates that do restraining orders, custody, divorce, and I think everything we do, every satellite office, every employee, always safety plans in their discussion. So anytime we're speaking to someone, we are always assessing what safety plan and what we're going to do to keep that individual safe. And last but certainly not least, we have our education and training programs. And so that department goes out into all of the schools and teaches kids about safe touch, unsafe touch. They teach teachers about disclosures and what to look out for in children. You know, if a child discloses maybe sexual abuse that's happening in the home, what to do. So they're a really valuable department to what we do. Okay, so here we have our counseling rooms, and I'm just going to go through each department. And I just put pictures that we had, some on our social media and just some that I had taken over the past year. And so right now what you're looking at are our 2 child counseling rooms. And so we have 2 child counselors, and there's Raina, the manager of counseling and advocacy, and that's her office. We have many more counselors than this, but this is all that fit in the screen. And so what they'll do is they'll do crisis counseling. We offer, one of the modalities we offer, and some of you may have heard of it, is EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization reprocessing therapy, which is really a successful form of therapy for trauma victims. We offer trauma-focused CBT therapy, DBT therapy, and play therapy. So you'll see right here we have the 2 doll houses, and if children live in one home or they live in 2 different homes, we'll talk to them about what it's like in mom's house and what's it like at dad's house. Or if they're in foster care, we'll talk to them about foster care through play therapy, because that's how children express themselves. And then again, we offer support groups and workshops continuously. And during the pandemic, this has been an unintended, I guess, positive consequence of COVID is our participation rate for our workshops and support groups have increased by 25%. And we thought going through Zoom and doing virtual platforms would actually decrease our support group population. However, it increased, and we thought maybe the abusers in the home and they wouldn't feel comfortable opening up virtually. But in fact, people have had less difficult time finding childcare. It's more accessible. They're feeling more isolated. So that's the feedback we're getting. So I think hopefully after the pandemic, we'll continue with some virtual options for our clients. Any questions so far? No? Okay, so this is the main headquarters. Inside, you'll see all these glass partitions. That is a direct impact of COVID. We used to not have that. And so a lot of times, we would be able to, this is where a lot of the counselors do their crisis response. So if someone's on hotline and they're rotating, they'll stay right here up front. We used to not have the partitions, but we did get them, and everyone seems to like them better. So again, another positive thing, under the circumstances. So one major thing that we do that I don't think a lot of people know about is, according to state law, whenever a sexual assault victim walks into a hospital and says they've been assaulted sexually, they typically get a sexual assault examination. And by statute, the hospitals have to contact our agency, being their local domestic violence or sexual violence crisis agency, and our advocates respond. 24/7. So we have advocates going there at 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning, all weekends. Whenever someone walks in, we go there. And most of the time it's for sexual assault cases where we stay with the victim. We make sure they understand the kit. We're trained in the kit process so that we can answer any questions they may have. And then we make sure that we relocate them safely the next day, or that we get them whatever they need to get to the next safe place. We also do this with domestic violence victims. So, the hospitals have been wonderful about contacting us and using us beyond that. If they're not sure if someone's a domestic violence victim and someone's being cagey in their responses about their injuries, or say, like I fell down the stairs, but it's not adding up. They've been wonderful as using us as a support and still making the referral so that maybe the victim's not ready to talk to anyone right then and there, but they contact us later. And that's really valuable. During COVID, so originally during the shutdown, the hospital wouldn't let us in. And so what we had to do is we had to respond virtually. And so they would either set up a phone or we would just do it over the phone and stay on the phone with the victim. Then I would say in about November, maybe a little bit before that, October, they opened up again and we were responding to calls at the hospital. And now it's kind of hybrid. We're very sensitive where they don't want to let us in because of the spike in COVID. So we're really taking a victim-centered approach and asking the victim what makes them more comfortable. And if the victim wants someone there, we come. If the victim just needs someone to pick them up and bring them to a safe location, we come. We also do police accompaniment. So if a victim walks into the local police department, they'll contact us. Not every single case, a lot of the high-risk cases, and they have a screening tool called the lethality assessment screening tool that they use. And if a case is high risk, we will go to the police department, we'll help the victim with a statement, we'll transport them, we'll relocate them, sometimes shelter them. So it's really a case-by-case situation that we handle each case. And we have a great working relationship with all of our local police departments. So this is Elizabeth House. This is our residential facility, which many people know as a safe house. It's for women and children who are fleeing abuse. The typical stay for a family nowadays is about 6 months, which is really tough because it's a communal setting. We usually have about 5 or 6 families staying with us at once, and there are rules, but not so many rules that they don't feel like it's a home. But the goal is for it to be temporary, as home-like as possible, but for it to be temporary so that we can help foster their independence so they can live independently. It operates 24/7. So throughout the pandemic, we had staff there working 24/7. It was covered just to meet all the residents' needs, the children's needs. And so right here you can see the kitchen. And then we have, general food in certain sections, but then each family has a cubby so they can put their stuff in each cabinet. We have multiple fridges, so you're just seeing one right now. And then our dining room, which, we have a table here, we have the children's table, and then in the kitchen we have another table so that there's additional sitting area. And then our pantry, which our staff is always stocking up. They're going out into the community, getting donations, going to Costco, just getting the food so that they can always keep a stocked pantry so that the families can go in there freely and make, whatever they'd like to make to eat. And then downstairs in our basement, we have another fridge, another deep freezer, things like that, because food goes quickly, as you all must know if you have children. So, and this is our living room and the kids' game room and the resource room. So during COVID, COVID was really hard on Elizabeth House. We had the children had to learn how to learn remotely. So we had to change some of the rooms to make them more school-like, if you will. Some of the parents don't even speak English, and they couldn't even communicate with the teachers to figure out the curriculum or how to help the children learn remotely. So that was a really difficult adjustment for both the families and the staff. But we made it through, and we made it work. We created a second living room just so that the families can separate a little and not always stay so close or on top of each other. You know, with a communal living situation, it can be difficult. And then the kids' game room, which also serves as a living room. And then we don't take pictures of their rooms or the residents, obviously, because their information is confidential. But it kind of gives you a look into their house. Okay. So now we have multiple satellite offices, and one of our main satellite offices is at Western Connecticut State University. And we have 2 campus advocates there, and their role is really to support students that go to Western Connecticut State University and Naugatuck Valley Community College. Their role is to inform them of their rights under Title IX, and also provide prevention education programs to all the students that attend. But beyond that, they do counseling, support groups that are really college-based, prevention education. They go to Title IX judicial hearings. So if there's a sexual assault, they also work with the Western Connecticut University Police Department, and they'll also go to the hospital with the victims. And then they attend judicial hearings. So it goes beyond criminal hearings that would go to Danbury Superior Court. The campus also holds their own hearings to see whether or not a student should be removed from campus. Right now, during COVID, the services are being provided remotely, but we hear that students are returning next week, and that they'll be remote for another 2 weeks just to get everyone adjusted, and that they're going to reopen again. So we'll see. I mean, we have the spike. We're keeping our fingers crossed, but most importantly, we want to make sure everyone's safe. So our staff will be on site starting next week, but they haven't been for probably the past 9 months. And so this is Danbury Superior Court. This is my former role that you just heard in my bio. This is where I first started. So at Danbury Superior Court, we have family violence victim advocates. Many people know them as our court advocates, and they're a satellite office located on the 3rd floor. And it's a very important role because they're the only office in the building that has confidentiality with victims. And so that's important because sometimes the victims won't disclose to law enforcement or to prosecutors or to attorneys, but they know that they have confidentiality with us. So they'll come to our office and they'll say, you know, I can't really tell the prosecutor what's going on because it makes me in more danger, but I can tell you. And so that's really important because it's really difficult to safety plan with someone when you don't really know the real situation. So sometimes we'll say, you know, just let us know so we know how to help you. And if you don't want us to say something, by law, we're not allowed to. And that's comforting for them, and they will start opening up. So our court advocates provide criminal advocacy, and what that means is if someone's arrested, they go to court the next day, especially with family violence cases, so that we can make sure we put a protective order in place to protect the family. And it's our job as victim advocates to call the victims. They have a right to know what's going on in the criminal case and to have someone explain the criminal process and what a protective order means and how to enforce it. So that's the job of our court advocates. If someone's injured, a victim has a right to restitution or compensation, financial compensation. And so our advocates often advocate for that within the courts. You know, they'll say, these are the bills, this is what you owe this person so that they can have, you know, A, B, and C fixed. Property damage, you know, you name it, we'll advocate for it. And then we offer civil advocacy. And what that means is, if there is a criminal case, a lot of times that person may be also getting divorced, but they don't even know where to start. And so we also provide civil legal advocacy, and we'll help them with the divorce process, with applying for custody, child support, anything that they need to get out of the relationship safely. Sometimes if they need an attorney, they may be eligible for Connecticut Legal Services, and we'll connect the two so that they can get divorced safely. And as many of you may or may not know, when a victim leaves the relationship, that's when they're most in danger. So out of the unfortunate homicides that we've had, especially in the past 20 years, it's usually when the victim's leaving the relationship. And then throughout all of it, we're often safety planning at every stage that they're at. So their safety plan may look like one thing one week, and then the next week it may look like something else. And during COVID, our court advocates had a really difficult time because they actually closed the courts down and everything went to Waterbury Court. So people were getting arrested, but it was hard, if you can imagine, victim advocates knowing what was happening in Waterbury Court to then relay that information to a victim so that they knew how to, what happened in court, how to enforce a protective order, what type of protective order was even put in place. So that was a really tough time. So what we did, and it was almost like nobody was listening to us at the time, meaning the prosecutors, the judges, they were like, oh, well, it's COVID. So all the victim advocates throughout the state created a unified letter, and we basically sent it to the prosecutor and the head judges throughout the state of Connecticut. And we said, from now on, moving forward, any cases that we feel victims in danger, we're going to red flag it, and then the ball's in your court. And so that made them kind of like stop in place and say, okay, we need to really start including the victim advocates because they're going to be the first ones to red flag when we're not doing, the best that we can to support them. And I don't think anyone meant to do that. It was just an unintended consequence of the shutdown. So that was a really tough time, those few months. But Danbury Superior Court reopened in June with limitations. But not to victims. So they wouldn't let a lot of the public in, but victims would be allowed in, and victims would be allowed to attend virtual hearings. So it seemed like they understood the importance of allowing victims to be a part of the process, and they figured out very quickly how to do it in the safest possible way. And so whether the victim wants to attend virtually or in person, that was allowed. And now just recently, I think since November, they opened it to the public with limitations, but the public is allowed to come in. They count heads at the door to see that there's not too many people. And they also are offering virtual hearings and modifications depending on the public's needs. So defendants have rights too. And so it's important that we uphold those rights. And so the courts, I think, figured it out now. And it's just something none of us have ever gone through. So how would we know? And then last but not least, our education and training programs. Our education and training department, like I said, they're in schools, they're doing adult professional trainings throughout the community. I think they do all middle schools, most elementary schools, and most high schools within our catchment area, which is pretty amazing. They pretty much connect with about 30,000 people throughout 1 year, and so that through all their programs and educational presentations. They do youth prevention education programs, preschool through college, adult programs, professional training programs. And then they oversee all the trainings of staff, interns, and volunteers because we have to be certified throughout the state, and we have yearly certification and training requirements that we need to abide by. And so the training department makes sure that we're on top of that and that we're trained with all the updated information that we need to know. And so those are some pictures there. And then that's our team. And this is what our team meetings look like during COVID. It's a wonderful team. I think our virtual Zoom meetings, as we all see now, keep us somewhat connected. So even though we are responding in person and doing many things in person, we're also doing many things virtually using the same platforms that many others are using in order to keep our staff and the public safe. So. Any questions?
Well, first of all, Lynn, that was an outstanding presentation, and I really appreciate it. And I think it just kind of drives home the scope of the problem. I mean, it's just obviously a lot going on that maybe is a lot more than most of us had imagined. And can you comment on that? I mean, just how big a deal really is all of this?
Well, so you know how I started at court, right? So I was kind of in my own silo, and then I think about 3 years ago, I came over to the main. I was there for about 12, 13 years, and I just needed something new, and I didn't want to necessarily stay in the same department. So I came over to the main headquarters, and I was just blown away at how much I didn't know about an agency that I had worked for so long. And I was actually disappointed in myself, because I thought, oh my goodness, I didn't realize we did so much. I didn't realize how much domestic violence and sexual violence impacts the community, that we need to do all of these different things and be available through all these different avenues. Many of us who are there have been there so long, we've made it our life's work. The direct service staff, not including the education departments, we connect with people either walking through the door, walking through the court doors, through WestCon, with almost 4,000 to 5,000 people a year. So that's a lot in our catchment area, and so when you look at those numbers, you just realize how important the work is and how meaningful it is. And, I can attest to the fact that, we've saved lives. So I feel really good about the work that we're doing. But yeah, it's definitely needed. And I still feel like it's not enough. I still envision in my head, like, oh, we can do this, this, and this to make it even better. But, one thing at a time. Right. So.
Lynn, would you mind just going off your screen there, just so we can get the rest of the people?
Oh, yeah. Stop the share.
Yeah, if you would.
Okay, stop share. Is that better?
There's the rest of us.
Okay.
Lynn, I'm curious that there are cases of spousal abuse that go the other way, right? Where women are attacking men or whatever.
Oh yeah.
So is there similar resources for men in the state of Connecticut?
Yes, and thank you. I forgot to mention that. So we serve everyone. So there's no individual that we won't serve. So yes, we serve men, the LGBTQIA community. We serve everyone. And so our name comes from women who got together in 1975 and founded the agency. And so it was created by women, and that's why the Women's Center has the name that it has. However, we do serve men. And in fact, at court, our numbers at court are probably, I'd say, 30% male victims and about 65% female victims, and then unknown for the others. So absolutely. And some very violent cases as well. So.
Joe Kreitz. Oh, I'm sorry. I saw Joe Kreitz had his hand raised.
Sorry. Yes, thank you, Dan. Lynn, first of all, let me start with wow. I mean, I'm overwhelmed with the services that you provide. A wonderful job, the void you're filling there. But let me ask if, of all the services that you already mentioned, is there a service that you wish you could be providing that you're not, or is there an area within the services you're providing where you need some help?
Yeah, I mean, yes, every department needs more help. So it's hard it feels wrong to pick one, but I think every department that I look at, even as a supervisor, I see them struggling, needing like another body, another person taking hotline, another person just to counsel because their schedule's so packed and they just need a break. Sometimes they just, I don't think people realize vicarious trauma. There's lots of science behind it. It's very real. When you work with trauma, it actually impacts you as a worker. And sometimes they just need a break because that's all that they do. And so sometimes as a supervisor, I'll look at every department and wish I can give more, so an extra body in each department. But law enforcement, we can't get to every police department. So an extra body in the police department. Danbury PD is great. They gave us a desk, a key fob, so we can walk in and out of there as long as we're secure and we follow their safety protocols. So, things like that would be helpful. An extra counselor, an extra counselor at the residential facility. It's a lot.
Any other questions?
Joe, am I online?
Yes.
Okay, my picture's not here. Can I ask Lynn a question?
Sure.
Lynn, I'm Dr. Jim Finkley. I'm a retired dentist. And as you probably know, in my profession, and this is by law, if we suspect that a child is being abused, I have to report it. Now, I could be dead wrong, but if I don't report it and it's going on, then, as you know, then I would be disciplined. But I don't think you all have anything to do with children that are being abused. Is that correct?
We do. So.
Okay. Well,
yeah, we do. We are also mandated reporter. It's the mandated reporters. It's the only exception to our confidentiality. So the statute says as a crisis agency, if we're certified, everyone has confidentiality. However, the only exception is if someone's suicidal, homicidal, and then if they admit to a child being abused or neglected. And so I'm actually a forensic interviewer. I interview young children who disclose abuse. Yep.
My second question is this. In the 36 years that I was in practice, there were probably 4 or 5 women patients that, as far as I was concerned, they were being beat up by either their boyfriend or their spouse. You could just see the bruising in the face and whatnot. That is not my prerogative to do anything about that. I mean, I know by law with children we had to do it, but with adult women, is this just something that you have to stay out of, or?
No, I mean, there's nothing wrong with what a lot of our medical professionals are doing now is they're just giving the resource, and they'll say, I wonder if you feel safe at home, and if you don't, here's a resource that you can go speak to that's confidential, and that's all that they do. And I think that goes a long way because we can't make adults speak, right? So even law enforcement, they struggle with some victims who are not cooperating for whatever reason, whether they're in duress or, you name it. So like having the office at court has been valuable. Like a prosecutor will say, if you don't want to speak to me, then go speak to the victim advocate, and we'll get somewhere once they speak to us. So it's very useful even just to provide and know that resource.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Lynn, if I counted correctly, you have about 50 employees?
Just under 41.
Okay, I didn't count correctly.
It's okay, close enough.
David?
Thank you, Lynn. Quick question is, how many people that go through your facilities, your operation, how many eventually go back to the other person who is creating the domestic violence?
So the stats say they go back about 7 to 8 times. I see plenty that go back. The number one reason they go back is financial dependency. So the first thing that's impacted is their financial situation. So a lot of times if a person's getting a divorce, the first thing I'll say to safety plan, which sounds so insensitive, but I'm like, how much money do you have? You know, because their response is going to trigger how I help them. And so financial dependency and children, people will put up with anything for those two things to survive.
Thank you.
Joe?
Joel? Yeah, Joel.
Yeah. Lynn, I have a quick question. Okay. We've been able to give you some funds through donations. Can you give us a little better idea what you really do with those funds and how we might be able to help you and other things? I think Joe sort of alluded to that.
So I don't know exactly what we have done with funds that were donated in the past, but in general, our funds can go pretty much primarily to three different things. It can go to staff operations, right? So it can go just to get us operating because we're a nonprofit agency. We do raise 50% of our revenue in order to keep our staff employed. So that's important. We also give back to the residents or the community clients. So if someone's fleeing, you know, we're making sure that they have enough money in their account for food for the month. We're making sure that they have enough money so that they have transportation to get to their job so that they're able to maintain a job for the longevity of their independence. We'll buy supplies that are needed, you know, like EMDR requires different tools in order to provide therapy. So it can go to a vast amount of things, but I can assure you every ounce of it's needed. So if you've donated anything in the past, you know, we greatly, greatly appreciate it.
Great. Thanks, Lynn.
Thank you.
Any other question?
Well done.
Yeah, Lynn,
thanks, guys.
So much.
Everyone.
That was outstanding. And we know that you can't stay much longer in the meeting, and we definitely appreciate it. But stay as long as you wish. But if you have to depart, that's okay too. But again, it's great. And hopefully the Safe Walk next year will be a real in-person Safe Walk, and a lot of us participate in that. And actually on our call tonight, I don't know if you noticed, Kathy Graham is there.
I did notice. Hi, Kathy.
Kathy has been a real force, I think, as far as mobilizing us to be aware of and help the Women's Center. So.
Yes. Thank you. Yeah, and thanks for having me, and thanks for your support for all these years. I really, truly believe it takes a village. So, you know, we're doing our part at the agency, but, you know, without you all, you know, we wouldn't be able to do the work that we do. So it really does take a village, and thank you all as well. So.
Our pleasure.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you. All right, so I'm going to sign out. Any last questions? No? Okay, wonderful. You guys have a wonderful rest of your meeting, and thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.